So I've been hearing some false narratives about the Yamasi and a whole lot of fuck shit that I'm about to clear up. Up first is these damn Yamasi Moors, which is the only leg these goofies that's pushing this narrative got to stand on. So let me expose the world so y'all can stop believing the fake. And what the fuck is that on their head? Is that a fucking Shriner's hat? Alright, never mind. The Yamasi are not Moors, and Moors are not indigenous to America. Moors are from North Africa, the Iberian Peninsula, and Europe. Y'all see that old motherfucker right there in the middle? Yeah, the one with the black Shriner hat on, the fucking sword, and the fucking Masonic regalia. Yeah, that's Malachi York, and he's the main culprit of a lot of this fuck shit. He's the reason you see pictures like this. Yeah, he pushed that whole Anunnaki paradigm, even though he ain't the creator of the whole shit, but he the creator of these pictures. So when y'all see pictures like this, it come from this fucking weirdo. We gonna get into it. Yeah, he's a whole fucking weirdo. But he's not a weirdo because of that. It's because he's a convicted pedophile. Caught his first charge in 1964 of aping a 13-year-old girl. The worst kind of bitch. And he go by Dr. Malachi York, but he's not a real doctor, just like Umar Johnson, whose real name is Jermaine Shoemaker, is not a real doctor either. And this weirdo York is a scam artist, just like Umar Johnson, just like Marcus Garvey, and just like Drew Ali, who's his predecessor of this Moorish bullshit ideology. Drew Ali plagiarized the Circle 7, which he called the Holy Quran, from the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, written by Paleface. Drew Ali is only said to have written the last 4 chapters of this book. Just like Malachi York false claimed the Yamasi are Moors, Ali did it first to the Anuawea or Cherokee. See, Ali's birth name was Timothy Drew, and he was actually born of the Anuawea or Cherokee in North Carolina. He went to Africa when he was young, where he traveled around with so-called gypsies as a circus magician, as a fucking circus magician. Then he took his goofy ass to Egypt and got indoctrinated by some Arabs and Europeans, then came back here on some fuck shit, spreading lies. And he was a Freemason. Let's get back to this weirdo Malachi York though. Alright, before we jump into this article, let's see what Google got to say about him. Yamasi Moors refers to a claim by some quote-unquote African Americans, particularly associated with the Nuwaubian nation, that they are descendants of the Yamasi Native American tribe and therefore hold indigenous status. Cap. Cause Yamasi ain't no motherfucking Moors. And then it say the Nuwaubian nation, a black supremacist group associated with Dwight York, uses the term Yamasi Native American Moors of the Creek Nation to describe their followers, claiming that they are indigenous to the Americas. Yes, the Yamasi are indigenous to the Americas, but the Moors are not. The Moors are not fucking indigenous to the Americas. And you see that this goofy changed his name from Dwight to Malachi. Cap. Sound like Umar Johnson, Jermaine Shoemaker to me. Now, we're only gonna read a little bit of this article because it's too long and I gave this goofy too much time on my page. But the article says, Nuwaubians refer to their belief system which mixes black supremacist ideas with worship of the Egyptians and their pyramids, a belief in UFOs and various conspiracies related to Illuminati and the Bilderbergers as Nuwaubianism, not as theology, but as factology, right knowledge, or a slew of other names. The group's founder and leader, Dwight York, took extreme advantage of his adherents' SAing children and cunning the adults out of their possessions. In April 2004, he was sentenced to 135 years in prison for SAing children, among other crimes. Good. By building a cult, he trained them to refer to him as a god. Dwight York was able to create his own personal empire over which he exercised dictatorial control. But before he was a god, he was a struggling ex-convict. Born in 1945, Dwight York was arrested for statutory R8 on June 25, 1964, for having SA with a 13-year-old girl. He was given a suspended sentence and put on probation. York broke probation later that year when he was arrested for possession of a deadly weapon, assault, and resisting arrest. As a result, he served 3 years in prison. Only fucking 3 years? That's wild. When York was released, he worked as a street peddler in Harlem, selling pamphlets he had written and other items including incense. York picked up a handful of followers, many of whom lived in his and his wife's apartment. York group was originally known as Ansar Pure Sophie. In the early 1970s, they moved to Brooklyn and took the name Ansura Allah Community, AAC. AAC men were sent to the streets to sell pamphlets, books, and incense. The literature raised money for York and his group, but it also promoted AAC and encouraged readers to come hear York preach. York went by several names while leading the group, but began to adopt the moniker Dr. Malachi York. Through the 1970s and the 1980s, the AAC expanded greatly. York eventually had 500 people living in about 20 apartment buildings that he owned in the Bushwick district of Brooklyn. The AAC operated bookstores, gift shops, a clothing store, and a grocery store. AAC chapters were founded in several other U.S. cities and abroad in Trinidad, London, and Toronto. AAC members in Brooklyn were asked to surrender all of their possessions, live in York's barrack-style apartments, and work for free. Many were given a daily quota of $25 to $100, which they had to reach by begging or selling literature. Those who did not meet their quotas were beaten or otherwise disciplined by York's thugs. York controlled his followers' lives almost completely. He chose their spousing, mating them according to his whim. Men and women lived in separate buildings. When they wanted to have sex, they were forced to ask permission to use a designated room. Sex with one's spouse was a privilege granted when one's duty has been performed satisfactorily. Meanwhile, York used his group as his personal harem. He was effectively able to have sex with any woman in a cult. And we're gonna skip down a little bit right here. It say, man, this weirdo was messing with one girl as young as 6 years old. Let's go down some. In 1993, York bought a 476-acre property in Putnam County, GA, and moved there with members of his Brooklyn chapter. The relative isolation of the land probably appealed to him. The move may have also been prompted by the fact that the group had been investigated by the FBI for criminal acts allegedly committed by its members in Brooklyn, including arson, welfare fraud, and illegal possession of weapons. In Georgia, York dropped the pretense of being a Muslim. The group went through several names and identities. For a while, York claimed to be Chief Black Eagle of the Yamasee Native American Moors of the Creek Nation. Some bullshit he made up. He even applied for a license to operate a casino. After this failed, York settled on calling his group United Nation of Nuwaubian Moors, using an Egyptian motif. He also started identifying himself as a god from outer space. I cooked this goofy. Now let's move on to somebody that came after him. Then after that, we about to touch on the real people, the Yamasee. It's not too much known about this goofy, but just look up. Do I gotta say much? He go by Chief Nanya Shabu L. Just goofy, cuz. But let's see what Google and them got to say. Oh yeah, I think I remember a couple years back, right? It could be probably like 10 years. It could be a long time. I'm not sure how long it was, but it was a few years back. I think I seen photos of him going around talking about he's the emperor of the Americas. And he owned all the lands and all of this shit. But he got a Photoshop crown on, cuz. You can see it in his eyes that he lost his fucking mind. Now, Google say this motherfucker here is affiliated with the Sikhada nation of Yamasi Moors that he created. This is another self-identified Yamasi group, but we know the Yamasi are not fucking Moors, and neither is this goofy here. So this goofy wrote some Moorish doctrine bullshit to the United Nations, claiming to be a part of the whatever nation that he created, knowing that all of this shit capped. It's the fact that he had the audacity to do this shit. It's crazy, bro. All right, let's go to this goofy page and break this bullshit down. Now, right here, you see organization's name. Sikhada Nation of Yamasi Moors. Some shit he just made up. Then you see the acronym in the former name, meaning it wasn't an original name, right? Is Sikhada Clan of Yamasi Native American Moors. Just goofy. Then we go down to address. Now check this out. It say Papa Cheese Atlan / Turtle Island. Turtle fucking Island? Man, come on. Fucking Siberian bullshit. You can see the phone number, the email, the website. I should call that fucking number, cuz this shit probably disconnected. But the organization type says indigenous peoples organizations. Now, languages. It says, this is the key point, y'all. Pay attention. This is how you expose these goofies. It says languages: Spanish, unknown, and English. But true Yamasi, no Yamasi speak Hichiti. So what more can I say? What more can I do? I gave my love to you. But they exposed they self, cuz. Like, it's right here. I don't even have to continue on with this goofy. Let's move on to the true people of this land, the Yamasi. This is the Yamasi War from 1715 to 1717. Now, they said the war ended there, but it really continued on for 100 years under different names. The Yamasi are mound builders and was known as the most powerful nation of that region, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and even Alabama for a long time. Yeah, and I said nation, not just the tribe. Before it was Creek, it was the Yamasi. On the oldest maps of that region, you see the Yamasi, and then later on, you see the Creek. First, let's type in Yamasi to Google and see what they say. Now, the AI overview says the Yamasi were a Native American tribe, really American Indian, in the southeastern United States, primarily known for their involvement in the Yamasi War from 1715 to 1717, a conflict with British settlers in South Carolina and their subsequent migration to Spanish Florida. Now it says, here's a more detailed look at the Yamasi. Origins and location. The Yamasi were an amalgamation of remnants of earlier tribes and chiefdoms, including the Upper Yamasi, primarily Gwale or Gutle from the Georgia coast, and the Lower Yamasi, Altamaha, Okuti or Okute, Achisi, and Yuha from the interior of Georgia. Yamasi War. Mounting debt and slave raiding by settlers led the Yamasi and their allies rebelling against the Carolina settlers in 1715. The Yamasi War saw them and their allies fighting against British settlers in South Carolina. The Yamasi were eventually defeated and forced to migrate south into Spanish Florida. Now say after the war, the Yamasi migrated south to the region around St. Augustine and Pensacola, where they formed an alliance with the Spanish colonial administration. In 1727, the combination of a smallpox epidemic and raids by Carolinian militiamen led to the dispersal of many Yamasee, with some joining the Seminole or Creek tribes. But that don't make sense because it wouldn't be a Seminole tribe, which Seminole is just a group of different southeastern tribes and bands and clans coming together. And the Creek, it wouldn't be no Creek without the Yamasee. But let's continue on. Significance in colonial history. The Yamasee War is a significant event in the history of British American colonial history, marking the collapse of indigenous power in the southeastern area of South Carolina. The Yamasee's defeat opened up the interior of South Carolina to further British settlement. All right, let's see what this website, Carolina.com, got to say. The Yamasee Indians. The meaning of the name Yamasee is unknown, though it may have been interpreted by Muskogee, Yamasee, gentle. The form given in some earlier writings, Yamaskaran, may have been derived from a Samoan dialect or from Timucua, as there is no R in any of the Muskogean tongues. The Yamasee towns and chief names indicate plainly that they spoke a Muskogean dialect, and tradition affirms that it is connected most closely with Hichiti, a contention which may be considered probable. The earliest references that we have placed the Yamasee on the Mogi River, not far above his junction with the Oconee in present-day Georgia. They seem to have ranged or extended northeastward of these rivers to or even slightly beyond Savannah, but always inland. The Yamasee Indians lived originally near the southern margin of South Carolina, perhaps at times within its borders, but they are rather to be connected with the aboriginal history of Georgia. In 1687, having become offended with the Spaniards, they settled on the north side of Savannah River on a tract afterward known as the Indian Land, and remained there in alliance with the colonists until 1715, when they rebelled, where they were defeated. Then they fled to St. Augustine. Villages immediately before the outbreak of the Yamasee War, 1715. This one says 1716, so you know they be playing with the timelines, right? There were the following: Upper Towns, Huspaw near Huspaw Creek between Combahee River and the Well Branch, Pocataligo near Pocataligo River, Sadakichi, probably near Salkehatchie, a hamlet at the Atlantic coastline crossing of the Combahee River, Tom Atlee in the neighborhood of Tom Atlee, Beaufort County, South Carolina, Yower near Huspaw. Lower Towns, Altamaha, location unknown, Chassis, location unknown, Okiti, probably near one of the places so called on New River in Jasper and Beaufort counties, South Carolina, Pocasebo, Telefini, perhaps near Telefini Creek, an estuary of the Coosawhatcha River in Jasper County, South Carolina. Other possible Yamasee settlements were Dafuski, Elkomi, and Peterborough. The first reference to the Yamasee appears to be a mention of their name in the form of Yamaskaran, as that of a province with which Francisco of Chocorua was acquainted in 1521. The province of Altamaha, mentioned by Hernan de Soto's chronicler Rangel in 1540, probably included at least part of the Yamasee people. For 100 years afterward, the tribe remained practically unnoticed, except for a brief visit by a Spanish soldier and two missionaries in 1597. But in 1633, they are reported to have asked for missionaries, and in 1639, peace is said to have been made between the allied Chatat, Lower Creeks, and Yamasee and the Appalachie. In 1675, Bishop Caldron of Cuba founded two missions in the Appalachie country, which were occupied by Yamasee or their near relatives. The same year, there were three Yamasee missions on the Atlantic coast, but one of these may have been occupied by Tomatili. Later, they moved nearer St. Augustine, but in the winter of 1684 to 85, some act of the Spanish governor offended them, and they removed to South Carolina, where the English gave them lands, get the fuck out of here, on the west side of Savannah River, nearer its mouth, Some of the Indians were probably from the old Gwale province, but the Yamasi now took the lead. That shit capped. The English ain't give us nothing. That was our land. Fuck out of here. 87 warriors of this nation took part in Colonel John Barwell's expedition against the Tuscarora in 1711. In 1715, the Yamasi rose in rebellion against the English and killed 200 or 300 settlers, but were defeated by Governor Craven and took refuge in Florida, where until the cession of Florida to Great Britain, the Yamasi continued as allies of the Spaniards. Meanwhile, their numbers fell off steadily. Some remained in the neighborhood of the St. Johns River until the outbreak of the Seminole War. The Oklawaha band of Seminole is said to have been descended from them. Another band accompanied the Appalachians to Pensacola and Mobile, and we find them located near those two places on various charts. They may be identical with those who shortly afterward appear among the Upper Creeks on certain maps, though this is the only testimony we have of their presence there. At any rate, these latter are probably the Yamasee, found among the Lower Creeks in the 19th century, and last heard of among the Seminole of West Florida. Of some historical importance is a small band of these Indians who seem to have lived with the Apalachicola for a time after the Yamasee War, and in 1730 settled on the site of what is now Savannah under the name of Yamacraw. There, the Georgia colonists found them 3 years later, and the relations between the two peoples were most amicable. The name Yamacraw was probably derived from that of a Florida mission, Nombre de Dios de Amacracy, where some of the Yamasee once lived. Ultimately, these Yamacraw are believed to have retired among the Creeks and later may have gone to Florida. It is impossible to separate distinctly the true Yamasee from the Gwale Indians. Mooney, 1928, gives an estimate of 2,000 in 1650, probably too low. A mission list compiled by Governor Salazar of Florida in 1675 gives 1,190 Yamasee in Tama. In 1708, the two tribes united under the name Yamasee were thought to have 500 men capable of bearing arms. In 1715, a rather careful census gives 413 men and a total population of 1,215. Lists dating from 1726 and 1728 give 313 and 144 respectively in the missions about St. Augustine. A fairly satisfactory Spanish census taken in 1736 indicates that there were then in the neighborhood of St. Augustine more than 360 Yamasee and Indians of Gwale. This does not include the Yamasee near Pensacola and Mobile and those in Creek Nation or the Yamacraw. In 1761, a body of Yamasee containing 20 men was living near St. Augustine, but by that time, the tribe had probably scattered widely. In 1821, the Imusas on Chattahoochee River numbered 20 souls. The Yamasee are famous, particularly on the account of the Yamasee War, 1715 to 1716, they say right here, but we know that's cap, which marks an epoch in Indian and white history in the Carolinas. At the end of the 17th century, a certain stroke was used in paddling canoes along the coast of Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida, which was called the Yamasee stroke. A small town in Beaufort County, South Carolina, is called Yamasee, a variant of its name. Let's take a break from reading right quick. Let's watch a couple videos on Yamasee history together, and I'll be back.
But very few people know their story.
Now, one developer is doing its part to preserve the past on land he owns, which was once belonged to the tribe. News 3's Andrew Davis has that story now from Seabrook.
The Yamasee tribe, Senator Tim Scott's office, archaeologists, homeowners, and developers all at the same table, all connected for one goal: protecting history while developing the future.
It's really for us a thing of respect. We're being given respect and we're being honored as well by the Bull Point Association.
The meeting is the first of its kind, and it comes after 13,000 different artifacts were found inside Bull Point Plantation over the years, all belonging to the Yamasee Indian tribe.
Knowing that there's artifacts here that were uncovered, it's important to make sure that we showcase the history, not just bury it in the past.
This one's a trading ground and ceremonial gathering place for the tribe. Several spots were already declared historic. Billy Gavigan is the area's new developer. He wants to respect all of the history in the plantation and the tribe as he builds.
A lot of tribes have not been included in these type of meetings, and it creates a disruption because when you basically say, hey, we have no respect for your ancestors, we're not respecting your graves or your ceremonial practices.
There's a way to showcase history and to bring it forward and also to have an economic prosperity with it.
Homes have been built on or near those sacred grounds in the past. The goal is to build a better future through a partnership, tribe and developer together.
It doesn't have to be a situation where you have to hide or you're manipulative. You know, when you run across Native American artifacts or anything that pertains to Native American people and thinking that it's going to stop or halt a particular project, there are those of us who accept and understand that oftentimes those artifacts that you find are found for a reason.
Hopefully this sets the model for the state and for some of the federal delegates to understand that we've got a history here and how to bring it forward together.
This is the first of several meetings between the tribe and the people and the developer himself. The hope is that they can come to an agreement within the plantation. Outside, they hope to help build a cultural events center so everyone can understand the history and the tradition of the Yamasee tribe. Andrew Davis, WSAB News 3.
I want to touch on the Yamasee War. And the reason why I want to talk about the Yamasee War is because the Yamasee War deals with the melanated man. And we have been told a filter. We have been given a filter. And when I say that, what I mean is they have given us our heroes. They have given us Martin Luther King that told us to allow white people to spit on us and beat on us and don't fight back. And if they spit on us, just take it. We have been given Malcolm X. We have been given Marcus Garvey, who before he got to America, when he was in Jamaica, had a woman and turned around, claimed that he loved this woman, but turned around and spent the people money, said that he was going to get a school for the Jamaican kids to learn their history and to give them a better education, but turned around when the people was giving him money for the school, he turned around, spent the money, and after when the money was gone and he knew the people was going to come after him, left her holding the bag and he came to America. And then told us to go to Africa, a place that he himself had never been. These are the so-called heroes that we was hanging up in our house because we had no education or no wisdom to understand that we have a very powerful history that they have hidden from us. And now we're coming to the point, we're coming into ourselves. We're waking up. So they can no longer give us the filter that they have always given us. They can no longer give us the pacifier, so they're at a standstill. I want to talk about the Yamasee War because it's one of the most deadliest wars that took place in America. And it happened on Good Friday, April 15th, 1715 to 1717. That wasn't the only war, but this was the most deadliest war. The Yamasee Indians resided in Georgia, Alabama, South and North Carolina, and Florida. That was their province. That's where they resided at. And I'm going to tell you what led up to the war, and then I'm going to tell you about the war. Okay? I'm going to tell you, like, some instances that happened. Like, it was a guy, his name was Alexander Long. And the reason why I want to tell you this, because I want to show you that the same thing they were doing back in the day, they're doing it now. Alexander Long was a trader. He lived in Cresno, close to the Yuchi Indians. The Yuchi Indians resided in South Carolina. The Yuchi Indians was powerful, and he would do business with them. He was a trader. And plus he owned his own store. So the Yuchi Indians would do business with him, and he would give the Yuchi Indians a different price than he would give the Cherokee Indians. He would give the Cherokee Indians a lower price and give the Yuchi Indians a higher price. The Yuchi Indians confronted him. When the Yuchi Indians confronted him, what he did is they began to fight. They got the best of him and pulled out a plug of his hair. He never forgot that. So he got his store, and he moved from Cresno, and he moved closer to the Cherokee Indians. 2 years later, a Yuchi Indian coming to his store, unwisely coming to his store. So when the Yuchi Indian came into his store, he fought the Yuchi Indian, got the best of this Yuchi Indian, tied the Yuchi Indian up, tied his hands and tied his feet up. This happened between 1713 and 1714, right before the war. He tied his hands and his feet up, and he put the gunpowder up under and blew him up. So Alexander Long got scared. So what he did is he told the Cherokee Indians, which was his friend, which he liked, he told them, we need to go and we need to kill these Yuchi Indians. We need to go to Cresno and kill these Yuchi Indians. He said, I will supply you with the guns and I will supply you with the gunpowder. The Yuchi Indians was like, cool, you gonna give us the gunpowder? You know, if you're gonna do all of this, then okay, cool. We'll go ahead and roll. So they go to Cresno. The Yuchi Indians and the Cherokee Indians begin to fight one another. The Cherokee Indians got the best of the Yuchi Indians. The Yuchi Indians, they ran them up into their own warhouse, the Yuchi Indians, the warhouse. What had happened was, they kept fighting. When the Yuchi Indians think that they wasn't going to win, what they did is, they killed one another and committed suicide. Out of the deal, Alexander Long got 5 children and 2 women. See, when they tell you that we didn't fight, like we was these docile people and we did not fight. Yeah, we did fight. We fought with them a lot. And this is why they had to build the school system to process your mind, so you don't worry about that your life, your real history. So they begin to commit suicide. And I say this story because, see, they do the same thing today. You got Blood, you got Crips, you got Four Corner Hustlers, you got all kind of gang members. See, and the reason why you see this is because we have always been tribes like that. We've always been tribes. You got these different gang members, and they turn around, and all of a sudden they got guns. 15, 16, 17-year-old boys that some of them don't even have a driver license, but got a gun. They got these guns. They supply these young children with these guns. Sometimes the guns, it'd be a box of guns in the hood just there, and don't know that they're setting them up for failure. So what happened is the police officer go and kill somebody from another gang member. They think the gang member didn't do it, did it, but don't know the police did it. So what they do is they begin to kill each other with these guns they so-called found, and don't know that the guns was there for them to find them. So you can kill one another. Let me tell you another instance that we don't know. There was two slave traders. Yeah, they were slave traders, and plus they was just traders. Their names was Anthony Probert and James Lucas. These was 2 white British men. What had happened is there was some Combee Indians. They didn't have no security. They didn't have anything. They just was living on the land. So what Probert and what Lucas did was took them into slavery. But see, one thing you don't understand is that when you took an Indian into slavery, you had to have a consent. You just couldn't come and kidnap them and put them into slavery. You had to have a consent from another Indian. So what happened is, when they put these people into slavery, they needed to get a consent. So what they did is they went to neighboring Indians and tried to get them to consent. Some of them went along with it. They met a guy, his name was his name was the Long Doctor. They tried to get him to consent to these Combee Indians being into slavery. What had happened is the Long Doctor got mad. He was a well-known man. He got mad. And what he did is, when they seen he was ready to fight, Probert and Lucas slid out and ran because they didn't want their lives taken. When they tell you that we just went along to get along, it's not true. A lot of us fought. A lot of these melanated men fought. And if melanated women understood that it didn't start with Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, it didn't start with Marcus Garvey. Your ancestors been fighting for you. The reason why they come in these hoods and get these young boys when they 14, 15, 16, and 17 is because they have to lock them up to get that warrior spirit out of them. This is why a lot of melanated young boys drop out of school. How do it look? Somebody telling you in so many words, you're not shit. You're not shit. And if you don't fall under us, you will never be shit. Now, if you follow us, we'll probably give you something. And you got to jump over all kind of hoops to get the little shit they gonna give you. They had laws like takeaway laws where if you was in debt, they can come in your house and they can take everything out your house. They can take everything out your house and sell it. They had laws where they had forcible confiscation when they had people out here and they would till the land. If you didn't do your fair share, they can forcibly come in your house and take everything out your house and sell it. They had relationship debts where they can come, and if your family and your friends, if you owe the debt, they can collect it from your family and friends. They had stuff like this. Even the city, they can collect it. The reason why this war took place is because the Yamasee Indians, they was not gonna go out without a fight. You had two negotiators. First of all, let me just say this. The reason why this war took place, number one, it was trading abuse. The Yamasee Indians traded with the British colonists. The Yamasee Indians, they normally had white-tailed deer. White-tailed deer went extinct in North Carolina and the Carolinas. So what had happened is, when the white-tailed deer went extinct, they had nothing to trade with the British colonists. So what they would do things on credit. The Indians didn't know anything about credit or anything like that, but they would get their supplies on credit. And normally what they got from the British was whiskey. They would get tools. They would get guns, gunpowder. This is the things that they got from the British colonists. So when they no longer had the white-tailed deer and they was in debt, they was afraid of being taken into slavery. They fought. See, the story, the narrative that gets you is in reverse. They was building, when the white-tailed deer went extinct, they was building rice plantations. They was it was like the British colonists was getting rich and the Indians was getting poor. And this was happening all over. So the Yamasee Indians was like, they not going out without a fight. But what lit the fire is a guy named John Wright. John Wright was a negotiator. John Wright and Thomas Nair. Thomas Nair wanted peace. John Wright wanted war. So John Wright wrote a letter to the Yamasee Indians and told them that when we get there, when the white man get there, we're going to kill your forehead chief. We're going to kill them first. Then we're going to take you and we're going to put you into slavery and take you to another country. You hear that? You hear that? Take you to another country. See, this is what they was practicing back then. That's why you can go to Africa and you can see somebody that look identical to you. That's the reason why. He told them that they are like women. So he said, in a matter of days, we're going to be and kill all of you. The Yamasee Indians got this letter. Okay? So then Thomas Nair comes. And see, Thomas Nair and John Wright didn't get along because John Wright had got fired. So him and Thomas Nair took his position. So they always fought with each other. A negotiator is it was like a judge. And what they did is when slaves, when Indians would be taken into slavery, and it was some type of dispute, either they would side with the Indian or they would side with the British colonists. So Thomas Nair, he was a negotiator back then at that time on April 15th, 1715. He was the negotiator. But John Wright was still trying to act like the negotiator. But those was the two main negotiators. And then there was two other men. And what had happened was when John Wright wrote that letter, the Yamasee Indians was confused because Thomas Nair was coming there with peace. So they didn't want to be taken into war. So what they did is they went on ahead. Thomas Nair got there. John Wright got there with two other men, got there. These was the negotiators. And they came there and they were like, they ate, they went to sleep. At the break of dawn, before morning hit, the Indians, all the males, was at one accord. And they painted themselves in red and black. Red and black meant death and blood. And the British colonists knew that. When they synced this, when they came out their tents and they synced this, it was 2 men that was able to escape, and one of their names was Seymour Barrow. And what he did, he just broke and ran. And when he broke and ran, one of the Indians, they got a musket, and that's like a bow and arrow, and shot him in his back, and shot him through his neck, and it came out of his teeth, and it broke the front of his teeth. When he ran, when Seymour Barrow, when he ran all the way to Port Royal. That day, the Indians, they killed, it was 100 traders in the Carolinas. They killed 90 of the 100. And not to mention John Wright, when he came, and John Wright was one of the ones that got murdered. John Wright, when he came there, he was already in debt. The slaves he had to sell them in the plantation. All of these traders was in debt. Probert and Lucas, all of them was in debt because they were being sued also. When they tell you the Indians, we couldn't sue, we couldn't do this, they lie. They lie about our history. So what had happened is when Seymour, when he went to, let me back a little bit. The man that was unknown, Thomas Nair, the one that wanted peace. What had happened is he saw how they killed Thomas Nair. And Thomas Nair kept saying, my God, and pleading with God. The Indians began to dance and say a dance, and they would say, my God, my God. When they tell you that your man is weak, your man is not weak. It's just that your history, you don't know your history. What they did is with Thomas Nair, they cooked him for 3 days. They cooked him for 3 days until they allowed him to die. And he pleaded for his life. And when he went to sleep, they shook hands with him and everything. Said that everything was okay. But when he woke up, they was ready to kill. And the thing about it, from Georgia, from Alabama, from Florida, they began to kill these British colonists all over. The Yamasi Indians then, after when they killed the traders, and the ones that was on that land in Charleston at that time, the ones that was on that land, and in April 15th, 1715, the ones that was on that land, they killed every last one of them. Massacred every last one of them. Then they made their way to Port Royal. When they got there, the Seymour Barrow, who got away, told the governor, Craven, told him. And that's what saved the people, because they was going to kill all of them too. That's what, because the Yamasi Indians wanted the British colonists off their land. So when the Yamasi Indians got there, it was a boat, and the boat was under investigation. They piled all their family and everybody in that boat, and they was on the sea when the Yamasi Indians got to Port Royal. So when the Yamasi Indians saw them, they surrounded the sea and began to shoot their arrows, shoot their muskets at them. And what they did is they burned up all of their cattle, they killed all their horses, and burned down everything that was there. They burned it down. When they tell you that the black man ain't nothing and want us to this is why I'm not quick to disrespect the melanated man, because that's who fought for you. Sometimes these people, before the war, when these Yamasi Indians, when they was going to hunt white-tailed deer, when they would come home, these settlers would sit up and take their whole family, and they would take the woman and the child and hold them as collateral, because these Indians was in debt. They got tired of that. Just like we're tired right now. A lot of us is tired right now. One thing I'm going to tell you, like Dr. Blair, Dr. Dilbert Blair, he said something, and I'm going to get off this live in a minute, but he said something that was very powerful. And he said, what I run into, the problem that I run into is that when I tell the truth, it's a no-no. He said, it's going to come a time where The truth will be a yes, yes. He said it's going to come a time where when they even utter a lie and try to utter a lie out of their mouth, your electromagnetic vibration will catch on to it quick and tune it out. And see, that's what's going on now. That's why this government is at a standstill. See, back about 20 years ago, none of us had a supernatural experience. So what the reality that they gave us, we had to deal with that reality because we had no other reality. So we had to deal with that reality, the reality that they gave us. Now a lot of us have had supernatural experiences, so they can't come to us and tell us that this is the be-all. We know it's not. We know that there's a higher power, and we know that it's more powerful than them. This is why they use trickery on you, because they know if they come at us full force, they will lose. They know this. That's why they don't do it. That's why everything they do, they use trickery, because they have to be very fucking careful, because they know who you are. They know the power you possess.
The Seminoles refused to sanction this proceeding of a few of their chiefs. The delegation themselves denied their own act and declared that they had not signed any paper which required them to relinquish their lands or remove from Florida. They were assured that they would nevertheless be forced to carry out the treaty. Micanopy, and old and inert, was a little more than a tool in the hands of the bold and crafty half-breed, dodged the hijack. Osceola, who though not a chief himself, exerted a controlling influence. The Indians resolved to negotiate time to place their wives and children in the safety and secure their crops and lay in ammunition, but in no case to leave the country. They showed themselves adept in the arts of diplomacy, succeeded in putting off any decided action until the spring of 1835. A council was then held. Osceola and 8 others agreed to abide by the treaty, and the opening of next year was fixed upon the time when the removal should commence. Micanopy, Sam Jones, and 3 other leading chiefs refused to agree to this. General Thompson, the Indian agent, therefore struck their names off the rolls of chiefs, declaring them no longer counselors of the nation. Nothing was farther from the intention of Osceola than to fulfill his agreement to immigrate. He wished to gain time, and above all things, by display of friendship, to procure arms, powder, and lead. Thompson refused to sell these. Osceola, for a moment forgetting himself, broke out into a fierce passion. "Am I a Negro?" he said. "A slave? I am an Indian. The white man shall not make me black. I will make the white man red with blood, and then blacken him in the sun and rain, where the wolf shall smell his bones and the vulture live upon his flesh." He abused the agent and defied the power of the government and was put into irons. This here is when Osceola was being put in irons, aka chains or handcuffs. But y'all heard what he said, right? He said, don't let them make us black, and don't let them make us a slave. We are Indians. Now that was about some Indians that was in Florida, right? Well, here goes some more, and I'll be back.
So looking at this map, on the map that they claim said to America, now that we know it doesn't say that, if we look at it, we can look at the culture of the people and see who is really there. So this says Ocala. Now this is Ocala, Florida, and this is talking about the Ocalawaha. But it says that the Ocalawaha division of Seminoles descend from the Yamasee. But they can't be Seminole if the Ocalawaha were already in existence before the Seminoles. But we know that they're Yamasee. But how? It says betray their origin by the dark color of the skin. This is found in the book Black People Are Indigenous to Americas. This is also seen where they were considered Negroes by being carried away, and they also were called slaves or captives of the Seminoles, but we know they were not. Now in the previous, you'll see daughters of the sun. This is the same term used for the Tosuyaha. But right here is where one of the originals, it says the Okalaha tribe of the Kalawaha tribe of Seminoles are thought to be descendants of the Yamasees, as they are blacker than the other tribes. And the Yamasees are said to have been remarkably dark complexion. And it goes down and shows where a chief, he actually, it says, bore strong marks of his dark skin. Let him know that his ancestors were Yamasee, but they knew because of his dark skin. Now, these particular Yamasee, the Morgaricacans, this is where the word American comes. So it says the earliest appearance of a variant of the name of Morgaricacan and the land that eventually became the United States is recorded by the Spanish in 1680 as Amacracy, a tribal name contained in the name of the Florida mission, El Nombre de Dios de Amacracy, which was acknowledged as a Yamasee town located in the Tumakua province of La Florida. Swanson applied the name Amacracy as the original name of the Yamacraw, and the abbreviated form of the name Yamasee appears in South Carolina records as Yamasee. So this word, the Americans, we know that that could also be the Amorgaricacans, and they're talking about the Yamasee. Now this guy, he was like, oh well, these lands were called Mayaca. You don't know what you're talking about. But this is where he gets it from. He gets it from, again, Augustin Lee Plungent, who was talking about the land of Mu, and he called Mu Atlantis. Here we go, Queen of Mu went to Egypt. Her brothers worshipped in Egypt. This is ridiculous. But now, I have a book called The Yamasee Indians from Florida to South Carolina. In the index, you see Yamasee towns. Now, one of those towns is actually Mayaca. So I'm going to show you where this actually, where it comes from. So here is talking about the Mayaca. And what we're going to do is we're going to find out what Indians were actually in the town Mayaca. And so here we have Fray Juan Constamo, a friend of the friar who had carried off the bells, volunteered some years later that the Yamasee of Mayaca were an indomitable, unreasonable nation who would not settle down and plant, and that Fray Bartholomew had made himself sick trying to chase them down. But if someone is running away, that would make them Seminole, right? That's a bone. But you're trying to chase these people down to plant, but these things naturally grow for them. You say that they eat grass and wheats and roots, but these things naturally grow from them. For them, you wanted to make them slaves, but you couldn't, so you considered them indomitable, unreasonable. But one thing they didn't call them, one thing they did call them also was a nation. This was a nation of people there. There you go again, Mayaca. So even when the Tumakuas actually were sent down to go against rebels of Mayaca, but it wasn't the Yamasee, but later occupants. So the Yamasee were already there. So when we're talking about Mayaca, when we talk about Okali or the Okalaha, their ancestors were there and they're still here today.
I want to end it with this, right? When you hear people say that we didn't fight back, that only means they don't know our story, which is vast and complex. But our people was always fighting, like the Yamasee War of 1715 to 1717, the Gullah Geechee War of 1739 to 1858, the Oconee War of 1780s to the 1790s, the Creek with the Yuchi joining the Red Sticks, and from the War of 1812 to 1814, and another one in 1836 with the Creek Indians. Then you have the Seminole Wars, the Seminole Wars from 1816 to 1858, and the Miccosukee War of 1818. And that's just to name a few. So we was always fighting. But that's why I said the war didn't end in 1717. It really continued on under different names for another 100+ years. Now, family, y'all know I wouldn't be me if I didn't keep it G with you. So we're going to talk about this painting right quick. This is Peter Schneck, a Dutch engraver and map maker who created the engraving depicting the Yamasee War. See, the thing about him though is he never actually came to America. He was in Amsterdam and Leipzig, and we as Yamasee was always classified as Negro, depicted as Negro. And for those who actually didn't, for those Europeans who actually didn't come to America, when anyone said Negro, they automatically assume it looked like the people who actually ruled them for hundreds of years, thousands of years, and that was the Moors. So they basically use Moor as a reference point for any person of dark skin. And I showed that same thing in this video. Check it out on my YouTube, the stories of the infamous statuette, Chief Zachariah, and the Tale of the Two Kings. Now this is where the original depiction comes from, up there in the top left. Let's take a closer look. This is the up close look. Now let's look at the description. The Carolina image shows a Dutch view of the Yamasee War. The full title translated from the Dutch reads, "The gruesome attack of the Indians on the English in Carolina, West Indies on 19th April 1715 and some days after, in which action the barbarians tortured many men." The Yamasee was a conflict fought in South Carolina from 1715 to 1717 between British settlers from the province of Carolina and the Yamasee and a number of other allied Native American peoples, including the Muscogee, Cherokee, Catawba, Appalachee, Apalachicola, Yuchi, Savannah River Shawnee, Congary, Waxhaw, Petey, Cape Fear, Chira, and others. Some of the Native American groups played a minor role while others launched attacks throughout South Carolina in an attempt to destroy the colony. Native Americans killed hundreds of colonists and destroyed many settlements, and they killed traders throughout the southeastern region. Colonists abandoned the frontiers and fled to Charlestown, where the starvation set in and supplies ran low. The survival of the South Carolina colony was in question during 1715. The tide turned in early 1716 when the Cherokees sided with the colonists against the Creek, their traditional enemy. The last Native American fighters withdrew from the conflict in 1717, bringing a fragile peace to the colony. Dodge the hijack, we know when they say Native American, they talking about American Indians. Now peep this. This is why they reclassified us, and this is why they had to reclassify us. The Yamasee War was one of the most disruptive and transformational conflicts of colonial America. For more than a year, the colony faced the possibility of annihilation. About 7% of South Carolina settlers were killed, making the war one of the bloodiest wars in American history. The Yamasee War and its aftermath shifted the geopolitical situation of both the European colonies and Native groups, and it contributed to the emergence of new Native American confederations such as the Muscogee Creek and Catawba. The origin of the war was complex, and reasons for fighting differed among the many Indian groups that participated. Factors including the trading system, trader abuses. Check this out. The Indian slave trade, the depletion of deer, increasing Indian debts in contrast to increasing wealth among some colonists. Don't that sound familiar? The spread of rice plantation agriculture, French power in Louisiana offering an alternative to British trade, long established Indian links to Spanish Florida, power struggles among Indian groups, and recent experiences in military collaboration among previously distant tribes. Rarity. The image is very rare. This is the first time we have ever seen the view, which is largely unrecorded, although we note an example at Swan Auction Galleries in 2011. See, some people try to downplay or dismiss the Yamasee as if the Yamasee wasn't the most powerful tribe of this region. Everybody else fell in line. I just hope everybody able to follow along the dots that I'm connecting for you. See, the Yamasee was connected to all these different tribes. Even they say the Guale or the Gaale absorbed into the Yamasee, right? And then the Gullah Geechee actually got their name from the Guale, and it so happens to be that the Gullah Geechee territory of the Sea Islands is the same area of the Guale. So go check out my video, The Origins of the Gullah Geechee, if you haven't already. As we close up this presentation, I want to read a couple pages from the book, Black People Are Indigenous to the Americas. Now, with anything you read, you got to dodge the hijack if you know better, right? If you know more than what's being read, but I just wanted to cover all kind of points, right? Now, the Seminole means wanderers or wild people. They immigrated from the main body of the Creeks about 100 years ago, roving about, as Indian tribes are fond of doing, in search of new hunting grounds and wild adventure. And if you're subscribed to my channel, you know that's not necessarily true. If you've seen one of my last presentations, Mayan basketball guys, Kings, the Georgia and Florida thing, right? And that's showing how some of these Creek tribes are actually Mayans, or at least descendants of them. That's where you get the tribe in South Florida called Maya, spelled M-A-I-A, right? And Miami is actually named from that tribe, which all correlates with the Miccosukee, Seminoles, and Creeks, and essentially the Yamasee. But let's continue. They enter Florida enticed by the pleasantness of a country abounding in all manner of vegetable productions, grateful to their taste and lazy habits, affording fine hunting grounds and covered with beautiful lakes and shady groves. And there they encountered the Yamasees, with whom they had some hard-fought battles, and who were finally exterminated, and scattered remnant of them made captives by the Seminoles. That's cap. The Seminoles wasn't even a band or anything until the 1800s, and the Seminoles are a group of, or conglomerate of different tribes. Bartram supposes that some of them escaped and survived a considerable time, and relates a tradition of their enemies, the Creeks, that a beautiful race of Indians, whose women they called Daughter of the Sun, resided amidst the recesses of the Okefenokee wilderness, where they enjoyed perpetual felicity in ever-blooming islands, inaccessible to human approach. This terrestrial paradise, situated in a beautiful lake, they related, had been seen by some of their enterprising hunters, who had been lost in inextricable swamps and bogs, were on the point of perishing, but received unexpected relief from these beautiful women, who kindly gave them such provisions as they had with them, fruits, oranges, dates, and etc., but enjoined them to fly for safety to their own country, as their husbands were fierce men and cruel to strangers. It is probable he imagined that this fable took its rise from a fugitive remnant of the Yamasees, who found a refuge in this swamp, and were perhaps, after a lapse of time, accidentally seen by some of the hunters of the Creek Nation. Simmons, in his notes of Florida, says the Ocklawaha tribe of Seminoles are thought to be descendants of the Yamasees, as they are blacker than the other tribes, and the Yamasees are said to have been remarkably dark complexion. King Payne, the grandfather of Micanopy, the present governor, married his Yamasee slave, and his son Chief Payne, uncle to Micanopy, bore strong marks of his dark descent. All right, we're about to read the very next page, Yamasee or Yamasee, but I want y'all to use your critical thinking skills. Dodge the hijack. Creeks in South Carolina. The Yamasee or Yamasee were one of a small number of isolated tribes of dark complexion, Cap, found widely scattered among the inhabitants of North and South America, supposed to have been immigrants from Africa prior to European discovery of America. Cap. If this be so, it explains why Oola persisted in slave hunting about Beaufort 1520, these Negroes being valuable as laborers, while the Indians were worthless. It was strange too, if Negroes first occupied this section, were they predominant now? Now check out what Google say. It says, yes, the Yamasee are considered to be a part of the Mississippian culture, a group of Native American societies that flourished in the Midwestern, Eastern, and Southeastern United States from approximately 800 to 1600 CE. Here's a more detailed explanation. Mississippian culture. This term refers to a collection of American Indian societies who share similar ways of life, including building large earthen mounds, growing corn, and having fortified towns or small homesteads. Yamasee connection. The Yamasee, along with other groups like the Gwale, are considered to be Muskogean language people, and their cultures intertwine with the Mississippian culture. Linguistic evidence. Linguistic evidence suggests that the Yamasee spoke a Muskogean dialect, and their towns and chief names indicate a connection to Hichiti. Shared traits. While there were local variations of Mississippian peoples are believed to have shared basic traits and beliefs with other Southeastern Indians. All right, let's wrap up this presentation, but I want to end it by saying that Yamasee are not no damn Moors or Africans. The Yamasee are indigenous Aboriginal peoples of the Americas. Peace, love, and power to my people.